Wednesday. My name is Chuck Frohna. I want to tell you a little bit of history about how we got here tonight. For well over a decade, Walled Lake Schools hosted a parenting fair, and it was an event that happened once a year. And we brought in a keynote speaker with a bunch of other support speakers, and it was a one-day event. After many, many years of running the parenting fair that way, we evolved into where we are today, which is having Wellness Wednesdays every month. And there is a featured topic on each one of those Wednesdays, and that's been going on for the last couple of months. And that brings us to today and this Wednesday's topic, which is the multi-sport athlete. But before we get to that, I have some thank yous to our sponsors. That would be West Oakland Parent Resource Network, the Walled Lake Consolidated School District, Lakes Area Community Coalition, the Walled Lake PTSA, the Lakes Area Youth Assistance, and Oakland Community College. And then going on from here, our next Wellness Wednesday is January 19th. It will be via Zoom at 7 p.m. Nikki O'Donnell, a psychologist at Viewpoint Psychology and Wellness, will be our speaker that night. Okay, so let's get started. Our topic today, why should my child participate in multiple sports? There's a trend today in specialization in sports, and we are going to ask you to consider the alternative. Maybe. Okay, so these are some of the comments that we hear from kids when we are trying to get them to play multiple sports, at least at the high school level. They might say, I just want to concentrate on one sport. Or they may say, I want to spend more time working out in the weight room. Or they may say, my club coach says that I'll get more exposure if I spend my time with him or her. Or they'll say, my best chance for a scholarship is if I just concentrate on one sport. Or I need to concentrate on my grades, so I'm going to take time just to focus on one sport so I can concentrate on my grades during the other time. So although these explanations may seem to make sense, we're going to ask you to consider why your child should choose multiple sports. Nope, you want to move ahead. And there we go. So first off, let me introduce myself real quickly. My name is Chuck Frohna. I'm in my 31st year of education in Walled Lake. I've been 12 years as an assistant principal and athletic coordinator at Northern High School. Was a 16-year teacher and coach here at where we are tonight at Walled Lake Central. I'm a former baseball player decades ago at the University of Michigan, and I was an assistant coach there as well. Was a three-sport athlete in high school, and my wife, Kristen, is on the Wednesday Wellness Committee and is with me, with us here tonight. Next, I also will be introducing very soon our main speaker, Sean Grant. Sean has his master's degree in physical therapy from the University of Indianapolis. He's an employee at Plymouth Physical Therapy Specialist. He's clinical director at Wixom Walled Lake Center. He is a certified orthopedic clinical specialist. He is certified in mechanical diagnosis and therapy. He's completed a fellowship in functional science, and his patient caseload is a wide variety of patients, including little leaguers all the way to professional athletes. And he has a special interest in throwing injuries and foot and ankle biomechanics and the treatment of the spine. He is out of Alma College. He's got a Bachelor of Science degree in Exercise Health and Science, and he was a football, baseball athlete at Alma. Enjoyed 2 league championships and participated in the D3 football playoffs. So Sean lives what he's going to be talking to us about tonight. And lastly, he too is married. His wife is Michelle. He's got 3 sons, ages 14, 11, and 8. And he coaches them, loves coaching them. And so just another reason to know why we know that Sean is all in this topic that we're going to cover tonight. Okay, so we're going to start off here with a video that explains some of the benefits of being a multi-sport athlete. And we'll be seeing Stephen Curry, Bradley Beal, Brad Stevens, Dr. Joel Brenner, and Dr. John Fiore, D. Fiore, as we watch this video.
There's 5 seconds to go. Curry with 4, Curry with 3, takes a 3 for the win.
I played multiple sports growing up. Competitive experiences helped me gain confidence, gain discipline, and work ethic. It also helped me make friends and have fun.
Sports are a really important part of youth development, and sports should be all about having fun and learning the lifelong physical activity skills.
You gotta have enthusiasm to okay?
We're starting to see kids actually as early as 6th grade being ranked, and this really leads to a lot of pressure, both for the athletes and the parents, to decide to specialize early to get extra training.
We're concerned that perhaps athletes who specialize in one sport may participate in terms of numbers of hours per week and the intensity level to a greater extent than they can tolerate physically. There's a significant increase, over 40% increase in overuse injuries when training and competition is year-round.
Get those legs moving!
We have seen chronic tendon injuries develop in young athletes that can persist well into their high school, college, even professional careers. We also see injuries that can affect the growth plates, and the growth plate is an area of active bone formation. And with excessive overuse, we can see disruption of the bone formation process. And that can have consequences for long-term bone growth. The other concern about early sports specialization is what we call burnout, or loss of interest in the sport.
Young athletes now at about the age of 13, about 70% of them are dropping out of organized sports.
They just get tired of the grind of practice day after day. Studies of successful athletes, particularly at the elite levels, the national levels, the world levels, have shown that they do not specialize at a young age. In fact, they tend to specialize in their sport at a much older age than those athletes who don't reach those levels.
What do you play? Wide receiver and quarterback.
When I was a kid, I wanted to play every sport at the time. I wanted to play football, basketball, baseball, soccer, everything.
Well, I think it's huge. I always found that the players that didn't specialize early really had even that much more of an excitement level when it came to the mundane things of working on their game.
We recommend avoiding specialization before the age of 14. That seems to make the most sense from a developmental and competitive point of view. Participating in different sports provides kids an opportunity to gauge themselves, to find out what they like, what they enjoy. We hope that kids participating in multiple sports will maintain an interest in one or two of those activities long after they have reached that adolescent age, and that conveys benefits in terms of long-term health and wellness.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so just a couple of personal observations. At the high school level, we had been seeing a drop in participation in high school sports, and of course, I'm a little bit selfish, and I think, in probably wanting more kids to participate in our sports at the high school. But the trend that we've been seeing is that there is an increasing number of united teams, meaning a couple of different high schools joining together to create individual teams. Just in the last year here in Walled Lake, we have combined ice hockey teams, swim teams, and lacrosse teams between schools. And so one of the things that we see, of course, is because there are fewer and fewer multi-sport athletes, there is more likelihood that the high schools need to combine teams. Next, we also have fewer levels of teams. We are increasingly losing our freshman teams. Whereas in the past, most sports have had a freshman, JV, and varsity level. We are increasingly losing that freshman level and having those 9th graders play with 10th and 11th graders at the JV level so that we just have 2 teams. That has happened just in the last year or so here in Walled Lake with football, basketball, soccer, lacrosse, and cheer. And so we feel that if we can get kids to participate in more than one sport, some of those roster sizes will increase. Just a couple other personal reflections on why I think multi-sport athletes are good for our kids. My own daughter, Chelsea, was a 2-sport athlete, but also participated in marching band as a student at Huron High School in Ann Arbor. And by participating in 3 different large groups in the fall, she played field hockey. Throughout the year, she participated in marching band, and then in the springtime played softball. And one of the major benefits for her was just the ability to associate with different groups of kids. The group of kids that played field hockey were from a totally different socioeconomic status as the band group, who was multi-ethnic. And then in the springtime, when she played softball, that also was a totally different socioeconomic status of kids. And I think she benefited greatly by having different friend groups and being able to associate with all those different kids and families. I also spent 3 years coaching baseball at the University of Michigan, and part of that responsibility was recruiting. One of the things that I did in the off-season, and in college baseball, the main off-season is just in the winter, I saw more high school basketball games than I can think of. And the purpose of that was we developed our recruiting list in the fall and then went to watch high school basketball games in the winter. And we were able to see the footwork of the athletes that we were recruiting. We were able to see whether the athlete was a good teammate or not. Was he unselfish? How did he respond to criticism from the coaches? So there were lots of different characteristics that we could see through a multi-sport athlete as a college baseball coach. And then lastly, we have so many awesome testimonials from our kids at Walled Lake Northern High School. Kids who have gone or are currently in medical school right now, and just talk about the awesome experiences that they had with multiple coaches and multiple teammates, and what they learned by playing multiple sports, and how that has helped them manage the stress, the workload, and the challenges of med school. We also have 2 Big Ten athletes participating right now, one at the University of Michigan on the soccer team, and one at Michigan State University on their soccer team. They happen to be sisters, and they both were multiple sport athletes at Northern High School, and attest to participating actually in dance and in basketball. They learned plenty of team lessons during those years as well. So the testimonials of multiple sport athletes abound. And so those are some of my personal observations and experiences. Now I'm going to turn it over to our guest, Sean Grant, who's a physical therapist, and we'll talk a little bit more about the physical and mental benefits of being a multi-sport athlete. Sean?
The tissue failure over time.
in a study by Dr. Bell, looking at sports specialization and risk of overuse injuries. Basically, what they concluded after their study was that it is associated with an increased risk of overuse musculoskeletal injuries. I found this table, and I couldn't quite get the table on here, so I just wrote this out. That was in Sports Health Journal, and it looked at what year-round training was. They classified it as greater than 8 months of doing the same sport or the same training. Choosing a single or main sport and to quit all other sports to focus on one. Those were the 3 criteria that they set. If you had none of those or one, they found a very low risk of injury or serious overuse injury and a more moderate risk of an acute injury. That makes sense, being that you might be doing something your body's not familiar with, and there's a risk that you could sprain an ankle trying to turn a direction you're not used to turning. If you had 2 of those criteria, there was a moderate risk of injury or serious overuse injury, and a lower risk of an acute injury. And if all 3 of those were present, they had a much higher risk of injury. And that physician, I forget his name, that was on that video, he talked about 40%, which is a really big number in that case. So they found again that year-round training, choosing a single sport, or quitting all other sports was positively correlated with increased serious overuse injury. Risk factors for injury in young athletes who specialize in a single sport. Let's see, there was one other part of it. I'm sorry. So, their take home from this was that adults involved in instruction of youth sports may also put young athletes at risk for injury by encouraging increased intensity in organized practices and competition rather than self-directed, unstructured free play. Learn a new task, or being in a situation where you're doing something you're not familiar with, and you have to learn, how am I going to accomplish that? Or I'm not familiar with the context of this game as well, and you have to pick that up slowly. Again, with one of my kids, I saw that playing football for the first time. In the first 3 weeks, he had no clue what a linebacker was, what a lineman was, what side of the field do you stand on, and by the end of the season, he doesn't even want his wristbands anymore. He said, I already memorized all the plays. I already know what I'm doing. It was a big step in development for him. And I think as we continue to give him those opportunities, he'll continue to grow intellectually as well. In avoiding burnout, it really is sad, and Mr. Froning, you had mentioned just lower turnout in high school you're seeing. And I think that's a very real thing, and it's a very real concern. Because playing sports, playing music, these extracurricular activities, they do a lot for athletes and kids, especially developing kids with developing minds. And I think that the more we can encourage them to do that, the better. This isn't to say that there's absolutely no benefit ever to specializing. I think that there's probably a time and a place for it. Certainly, the older you are, the better. I think it's okay to say, I feel like I'm going to make it in this sport. It's my best opportunity to get a scholarship. That's a very real thing. A lot of the high school athletes I see, or many of them, are competing for a scholarship. So if they feel like they can get that one little edge, I just spend more time doing this, more time in the weight room, more time reading playbooks, whatever it is, that they're going to have that edge. It is okay to veer towards a single sport, but not at the sacrifice of not playing the other sports. Cody White, I had the privilege of meeting him and getting to know him when he was a student at Walt Lake Western, and when he was a student athlete there. And I had seen him even through his recruiting process when he committed to Michigan State, and he was in the course of his senior year where they went to the state championship. And when they lost in the state finals, I was talking to him the following week, and I asked him, what did Coach D'Antonio tell you about playing basketball this coming fall, or winter, and playing baseball in the spring? And this is what he said. He said, go enjoy playing basketball and baseball with your teammates and go win a state championship if you can. He said that he wants athletes, not football players. That was a surprise because he really was going that very next season to play Division I college sports. Knee injuries are real in basketball, ACL tears. There's things that can happen. And he didn't bat an eye. And I thought Kobe really exemplified, as well as a number of the athletes that Coach Froning was just talking about, what it is to be a multi-sport athlete. And I recently talked to him and asked him if there's anything that he'd want me to share on this topic. And he just said, mention that as he went through the recruiting process, that coaches were very interested in in playing multiple sports. Did you play another sport? And that's something that he felt was pretty strong throughout the whole recruiting process. The interesting number, I think this is 2018, I want to say last year or the year before that, it was like 30 of 32 of the players drafted in the first round of the NFL draft were multi-sport athletes. Very few. And then that previous study, that only 17% of Division I, women's, college soccer had specialized in that sport. So, it is telling that diversification probably gives you a better chance of excelling at the next level and the level after that. And specialization will absolutely increase your risk for overuse injuries in those sports, and it really may not leave you in a better position afterwards. But thank you for your time. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Froning.
Thank you so much, Sean. Your expertise is awesome, as well as your stories about your athletes and your kids. We really appreciate you being here with us tonight. We thank everybody for tuning in and listening to our presentation. We want to thank Matt Weber, who is our technician tonight, and we hope to see you again. Thank you very much.